Okay, well, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. There might be some other folks that are still on their way, but in the interest of the rest of your day, we're going to go ahead and get this luncheon kicked off. So I'd like to start by thanking Susan Thompson and the Lansing Chamber of Commerce for hosting this economic development education session / lunch. I'm Dan Podgorski. I'm the Village Administrator in Lansing. Also, before we get started, I'd like to recognize Lansing Mayor Patty Iden, who's in attendance. Mayor,
morning,
thanks
everyone.
for being here. And also one of our Lansing trustees, Jerry Zeldinglast. Okay. So today's function on economic development, this is sort of a follow-up to an event we held in February with the Chamber. We did it at the library. It was called Gov 101. That's kind of what we called it. It was sort of an introduction to village government. We had all of our department heads come up and give a 5 or 10 minute or longer introduction to what they do. And we had a lot of good feedback from that event. And the suggestion was, hey, could we do something later in the year that focused strictly on economic development? And so I agreed with Susan that we would do that. And so today you're going to get, this is all going to be a focus on economic development. We have several speakers that are going to be up here. We're going to give you a flavor for how we go about doing our business, how we go about creating a culture that encourages economic development within the Village of Lansing. You're going to learn what we do internally to create reasons for people to come to Lansing and why businesses would want to come here. We call it our internal development. And then we're also going to do a deeper dive into specifics. If you have a business or you're thinking of moving to Lansing, or even if you're here, we're going to do a deeper dive into incentives. You might hear things such as Cook County Class 8 tax incentives, tax increment financing. Some people call it TIF. We're going to talk about the village's facade program. So we'll do a deeper dive into some of those things a little bit later. The way we're going to run the day is we're going to talk for about a half an hour. It's about 11:15 now, so we're going to talk until about 11:40, 11:45, and then we'll break for lunch. I'll let you guys get up and walk, and if you want to ask the people who spoke first, you can have a chance to ask them some questions. We'll give you 20 minutes or a half hour to get some lunch down, and then we'll come back up. And then we'll continue, and we'll try to wrap, if we can, by 12:30, 12:45, and then we'll have lots of time for questions. So feel free. We're going to try to keep it rolling until the end in terms of questions. So that's how we're going to run the day. I'm going to get us started here. And so our first slide is, again, just kind of an introduction. And again, what we're going to do here today is talk about development, economic development. And you're going to hear me talk about the word culture, all right? Creating a culture. Development is not as simple as somebody walks through the door and then they apply for a business license and then they get their license and open up their doors. We know there's lots of challenges and hurdles to development. Generally, money is involved and cost of acquiring or leasing property. There's issues such as zoning, right-of-way, utilities, and then of course money can take on several different challenges, not only loans but incentives and gaining approval from the village board. So there's lots of challenges to development. It doesn't always go as quick as everybody would like, but our thoughts in general in Lansing are to create a culture that encourages development. All of our department heads, all of our elected officials, all of our staff. When a question comes in about development, everybody understands that it's a priority, and they want to get that question to the right people. And we try to drop what we're doing, and we try to address people as quick as we can. Like I said, incentives are just the beginning. Usually it's that first impression that you give somebody when they call. Businesses such as Chick-fil-A, Chipotle, we've seen a Chipotle open up here recently, Chick-fil-A. They've got lots of opportunities. right? They don't have to just open in your town. And if you give them a bad first impression, they're likely to keep on moving. They'll go to the next town because they're going to be welcome somewhere. So it is that first impression, that effort. You want to give that developer, you want to give that business owner, you want to give them that positive first impression that, hey, we want you here. We're business friendly. We're going to do everything we can to clear the deck, roll out the red carpet, and get you here, no matter what it takes. When they hang up the phone for the first time with you, or when they leave that initial meeting with you, I'm not saying that their decision's been made, but in a lot of cases, it might be. And if you give them a bad first impression, they probably won't come back, right? So you're gonna get real positive vibes from us, pretty much no matter what, unless you're coming in with something we absolutely don't want. But if you're coming in with a good family-friendly business, a retail business, a service that's got a lot of demand for it, you're going to see that we're going to be pro-business, and that's what we're going to show you here today. One of the bullet points on the slide there, development opportunities can come from anywhere. You don't know where that first phone call is going to come in. Sometimes they're going to call my office. Sometimes they might reach out to the mayor or one of the trustees. Sometimes they might just know somebody who works for the village. And hey, I got a buddy who wants to open up a business. How do I get into your town? Who do I call? So that's part of developing that culture. We want everybody who touches development or knows somebody who touches it to feel like, hey, they can refer somebody to us, and we're going to give them, the benefit of the doubt. We're going to give them our A effort. All right, so. We have a great lineup of speakers here today. You're going to learn, again, a little bit about how we go about doing our business. You're going to learn about incentives. You're going to learn about the what happens before a business opens. And I think you're going to walk away with a much better understanding of what we do. So I'm going to first introduce Zoran and Randall. You guys coming up together?
Yes.
You are, okay. So we're going to introduce our building commissioner, Zoran Savic, and our Lieutenant Randall Wright, who's in charge of the Fire Prevention Bureau. So these two gentlemen, they work together, and a lot of times their effort, their involvement is critical before somebody comes in. Someone's looking at a building, looking at a site, and I'm going to send Zoran and Lieutenant Wright out to meet with them, to vet the building and give them an idea about whether or not they even want to locate their business there. We call it the pre-inspection process. So these guys do that. More importantly, they are going to help lead a review of your construction plans. They're going to walk you through that business license process. And the bottom line is, they're in charge of fire codes, building codes. They exist in many ways for your safety and for your customer safety, to make sure that when you open that business, it's a safe place for them and for their customers. So without any further ado, Building Commissioner Zoran Savic, Lieutenant Randall Wright from the Fire Department.
Thank you very much, Administrator Podgorski. I think I could probably use this microphone as well. I think I want to start by telling you guys a funny story. About a young man that was visiting, he had his grandparents visiting the United States. They grew up in on the farm fields, never saw a television set, obviously never went to school. So they came to this great country, and they were just like amazed to see the beautiful buildings that we built here, those skyscrapers in downtown Chicago. This was back in the 70s, so 1974 is when they finished the what was then the Sears Tower. So they walked into this beautiful building, just amazed at the size of the ceilings in there. I mean, the largest thing his grandfather ever saw was the barn on the farm that they lived on. So what ended up happening was that as they were standing in the lobby, the grandmother, along with the younger one, went into the bathroom to get changed. And all of a sudden, the walls began to part. So the grandfather was just shocked. He's never seen an elevator in his life. He didn't know what this was. So he stood back a second, he pulled back his grandson. His grandson said, that's the elevator, grandfather. So he looked, he never saw it, he never knew what it was. Just at that moment, this elderly lady said, excuse me, so they stepped aside. She walked into this elevator, the walls closed up again. The young man began to explain what this was all about, what this elevator was. All of a sudden, a second later, the elevator doors opened up, and this beautiful young 24-year-old girl walked out. And he said, I've heard of the Fountain of Youth, but this is incredible. He said, go grab your grandmother and get her over here. So, I mean, so many people that come to this country are just amazed at what we've been able to build. You know, from 1871 when we had the Chicago fire. In the last 100 years, if you look down our skyline, it's just incredible what we've been able to accomplish in this country, and at that time having the tallest building in the world. It's all starting with the building codes. I have a electrical building code here that my father gave me that was copywritten in 1918, so just incredible, very fragile, and a little gift from my father. And with today's code books and what we have today, we've got these dictionary-size books that we have to go through in order to keep all of you safe. We have to work together to make sure that what's in these code books coincides with what's in those blueprints before the shovel ever hits the ground. I hope you guys enjoyed that story. I think we'll start with our first slide. That was a few years ago. I think I looked a little clearer there. So the first thing I'd like to talk about today is what projects require the permits. A lot of people call in and have a lot of questions. They're unsure of what needs a permit, what doesn't need a permit. When it comes to life and safety, when it comes to plumbing, electrical, heating, cooling, roofing, signs, we require permits for all of that work. We want to make sure that everyone is safe. We want to make sure that all of our contractors are registered. I think that's the toughest thing. We are very efficient in the Village of Lansing of approving those blueprints that you see on the table there. But the hardest thing that we always have trouble with is getting contractors to register on time. For some reason, they're always so busy, they can't get our insurance, our bond, our workman's comp, everything we need in order to be able to issue that permit. So what doesn't require a permit is simple things like painting, putting up cabinets, doing some flooring, carpeting. We don't require permits for any of that due to the fact that we don't feel that that's a hazard that'll create fires, flooding, and so on. So share that with a lot of your friends, a lot of other businesses and homeowners. We have a lot of our trustees that get these questions. Our front desk, our water department constantly gets these same questions. So feel free to always help one of your neighboring businesses out by answering those questions or refer them over to us. We'd be more than happy to answer for them. Our health inspections, for those of you that have restaurants, I'd like to go through a little bit of that for you. We have our health inspector, Jeannie, that comes out to your businesses. Some of you may have met her over the last few years. At least 2 people per shift must have food protection management manager certifications. That is a requirement, and you have to have that certification in order to be able to run a restaurant. The allergen awareness certification as well, very important. We've got a lot of people that get sick with allergies. Some use peanut oil to cook, and then we come to find out that we have issues with a lot of our residents. All employees should have the food handlers certification, so everyone handling food must have that certification. If you are serving or selling liquor, all of the employees that are handling any of the liquor must have the Bassett certification. So please make sure that anyone, if you do have a liquor license, that everyone handling the liquor does have that certification. Must have pest control logbooks, monthly reports from a certified pest control company. Again, going back to allergies, you must have a signed that explains if you are using anything, such as peanut oil, that someone may end up getting sick from. We need to have that signage. The neurovirus cleanup kit, along with the written procedures for cleaning it up. You must have that in writing, those procedures. All of the individuals that are handling the food must know how to use that kit. Labels are needed on all of the foods that are kept in the coolers. You always want to keep the meats on the bottom. So any of the red meats, any of the steaks on the bottom, keeping all the salads and others on top. Otherwise, you risk the chance of having the cross-contamination where the red meats may drip down into the salads. So we want the meats on the bottom 6 inches off of the floor. We want to have expiration dates on all of the food. We want to make sure that you don't have food in any of those coolers longer than 6 to 7 days. If it's not used and sold, it has to be thrown out. All of the coolers must be at 41 degrees Fahrenheit or cooler, as I mentioned, for a maximum of 7 days. As I mentioned, you have to be 6 inches off of the floor on the shelf. All of the coolers must have thermostats. I've seen a lot of coolers where the thermostats either are broken or they're not working. Any refrigerators have to have cooler. Any freezers have to have the thermostats in all of the freezers and coolers. So please make sure we have that. Randall, I think I'd like to introduce once again our Lieutenant Randall Wright. We'll be taking you through all of the fire prevention codes and ordinances. Mr. Wright?
All right, thank you, Commissioner Savick. I'm going to go ahead and have him stay up here. Like Podgorski said, a lot of the things we do is in tandem. So we kind of work together on projects a lot. So feel free to interject as I get to those sections. But for those of you who do not know who I am, my name is Randall Wright. I'm in charge of fire prevention for the Village of Lansing Fire Department. That handsome guy there. You guys are probably looking at these photos, maybe wondering, what does the fire department have to do with economic development? I can assure you we are a piece of that puzzle, so I'll go ahead and dive into a little bit of the specifics here. Just to give you a brief overview of our fire department, we're kind of split up into 2 divisions. We have the response division, and then we have the fire prevention bureau, which I'm a part of. So we're staffed with 1 fire lieutenant, and then we also have 2 civilian fire inspectors who work a 40-hour work week. Their primary duties is to provide fire and life safety education for the village and the businesses. Okay? They also support the department's community outreach efforts. So how do we do that, right? The number 1 goal for the Fire Prevention Bureau is to ensure building safety. Okay, so we do that a number of ways, similar to the building department. Our approach consists of pre-development and construction meetings, plan reviews, and inspections. Zorn, do you want to talk about the pre-development and construction?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. I brought a couple of blueprints up here. The larger one is our new Chick-fil-A that will be opening up next Thursday. I think everybody is just so excited, can't wait to get into the new Chick-fil-A. The larger blueprints like that we have sent out. So we kind of shop that out. We have an outside firm that does our review for us, making sure that everything coincides with the code books. The much smaller blueprints there next to it on the table. Randall and I usually go through them. We kind of approve them ourselves in-house. It's much faster to get that done, but we are very efficient. Our building and fire department are probably the quickest. I've worked in many towns, cities, and villages, and we are fast. I mean, we get permits out within just a few days. Blueprints are reviewed within a week or if we send them out, the large prints, it might take a week or 2, but within 10 days we have answers. So we're on top of things. A lot of our contractors are, as I mentioned earlier, the issue is getting all of our contractors registered and on time. They kind of hold us up. We require them to come in and get registered. The registration is like $75. Again, nothing more than your name, your address, your company name, and so on. It's not as long as the doctor's forms that we have to fill out when we go to the doctor's offices. So we are looking at a couple other new projects that are coming to town, such as the True Hilton Hotel. We just had, not long ago, the pre-construction meeting. Before we issue the permits, we ask that all the contractors come in, sit down with us. We have all of the architects, the engineers, all of the contractors that'll be on site. We have them all come into our conference room. We all have a seat. We have a meeting. Our engineers come as well. Lieutenant Miranda Wright comes. We sit down. We go through all of the stages of the project. Any questions on any of the drawings that they have, when inspection should be called in, and again, we get out there the next day, so if they need inspections tomorrow, unlike a lot of the other towns and villages, it may take a week or two for an inspector to be able to come out. So we have the pre-construction meeting to make sure everybody is in lockstep with us. We all work together, we match the names with the faces so we all feel comfortable with one another. And then we issue the permits and get started. The inspections, for the most part, we have the rough inspections and the final inspections on each part of the project. So that's pretty much what we do in terms of prior to the shovel hitting the ground and permits being issued.
All right, thank you. So as Commissioner kind of said, we want to make this a seamless process for the village. You as a business owner, these pre-construction meetings are designed so we can tell you things up front, right? So that creates less surprises at the end of your project, right? So transparency is kind of the word for that. All right, so during these meetings, as it pertains to the fire code, this allows the time for all the contractors to kind of share their vision for the project, right? So we're going to discuss the fire code along with the village code and amendments. So those of you who do not know, the Village of Lansing has formally adopted the International Fire Code 2015 version. So that's the code we're going to follow during the plan review process. We kind of dive into separate codes depending on what type of business you have. So if your business currently has a fire alarm system, we're going to dive into NFPA 72. If you have a kitchen or some sort of commercial cooking operation, we're going to dive into NFPA 76. And then if you have a sprinkler system or your building needs a sprinkler system, we're going to dive into NFPA 13. And then there's your contractor slides over.
Absolutely. The other thing I wanted to just share with you is if you're a new business in town, Lieutenant Wright and myself come out, have a meeting with you at the location, kind of see what you're looking to do with the actual business prior to signing a contract with anyone or the landlords or management company and so on. Make sure that we address any issues and electrical heating, cooling issues that we see, any food issues if it's a kitchen and a restaurant. Make sure that the customer and the restaurant owner feels comfortable with the amount of work they're going to have to do. They feel comfortable with the contractors. They understand what needs to be done. They understand what they're going to have to invest in. So if you are a new business coming to town or you know someone that is, please have them reach out to Lieutenant Wright, myself, and we'll be more than happy to come out and discuss codes and ordinances and so on with them, signage, in order to be able to make sure that they know what they're getting into before they actually sign that lease.
Perfect. All right, so we're going to get into the plan reviews here. So all of the fire prevention plan reviews are conducted electronically. Those are going to be emailed to us. There's the email address on the screen. It's kind of small. You probably can't see it. It's fireprevention@villageoflansing.org. So those are for we use a third-party plan review service. His name is Kelly Reynolds. These are essentially for larger projects, right? So say if you have a 150,000 square foot building, we will then take your plans and send them out to Kelly Reynolds. There's his business card there. Like Zoran said, we also do in-house plan reviews. These are for our smaller projects. So if you're just coming in and you want to put up a wall or you want to paint, you want to redo some flooring, we're going to then review those plans in-house, okay? For third-party plan reviews and in-house plan reviews, it's a maximum of 10 business days turning around to get those plans back to you. Okay, so courtesy fire inspections. This is actually really beneficial to you as a business owner. for existing buildings. And I say that because there's a lot of older buildings in town that need to be brought up to code, okay? So this is an opportunity for Zoran and myself to kind of visually put into perspective what things are going to be needed to put these buildings back up to code. So some of the common things that we find during these courtesy inspections, first and foremost, smoke detectors. Egress doors, oftentimes they need to be replaced, they're in bad shape. And then exit signs and emergency lighting. And then, of course, fire extinguishers. There's 2 fire extinguishers in this room. You can see there's one on that wall over there. Each fire extinguisher needs to have a tag. These need to be updated annually. Oftentimes, we will go into these buildings and find that the tag is outdated. Okay, so you guys build a new building from scratch. The fire alarm, the sprinkler, the hood suppression, the drywall, the painters, they're done. You call the village for final inspections. These finals are going to be different depending if it's a new building versus a remodeled building. But same thing. So if it's a new building, 9 times out of 10, we're going to be in there a lot for finals. So we're doing finals with the fire alarm system. We're doing finals with sprinkler contractors. And we're doing finals with kitchen hood suppression systems. One of the last things that's probably going to be needed for your building, if they're equipped with these, is a Knox box. The good thing about these Knox boxes is that they're uniquely keyed to Lansing, so the only person that has a key to these buildings are the fire department. Okay, so why do we do all this? Community risk reduction is a big buzzword in the fire service right now. We want to reduce risk for the community and the general public. This is a quote that kind of goes into fire prevention. Investing in prevention today ensures a safer and more resilient community for tomorrow. If anybody has any questions, I know there's time for questions at the end, but here's my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you all very much, Administrator Podgorski. Thank you all for coming. If you have any questions, again, we'll hold them off to the end, and we'll be more than happy to answer all of them for you. Thank you again.
Inspections they make, a lot of times, Zoran and Randall, they will go out together so that somebody is getting an answer at the same time. And it's not, they don't see Zoran one day and then Randall a week later. They're both very responsive, and you need both of their signatures on your business license in order to get that. So glad to have them up here together. All right, so our next speaker, Zoran and Randall talked about what happens with the nuts and bolts of your building. Our next speaker is a planner, all right? And the planner is going to actually sometimes come in before the nuts and bolts of the building. Going to help with the decision on whether or not your business is permitted in the address that you want to operate, whether it is a use that's permitted in that area, or whether you need a special permission to have it in that area. She also performs site plan reviews, not necessarily the nuts and bolts of the building, but how the building and the site are going to work and how they're going to function. So think about parking lots, lighting, landscaping, and signage. She is our lead with the Planning and Zoning Board. She reviews the petitions that come in and helps shepherd those requests through our Planning and Zoning Board if you need a special use or if you need a variance. And she also has taken the lead role on advising on any changes to our village zoning ordinance. She is formerly in charge of the Frankfurt Plan Commission, currently a trustee in the Village of Frankfurt. Please welcome Maura Rigoni.
Today, I am Maura Rigoni. I'm actually a planning consultant with Robinson Engineering. That is the village's engineer. I don't want to have the word consultant. It means that I do not take Lansing to heart as we go through the process. Kind of a little back history. My husband grew up here, and I was just sharing that actually my in-laws had their wedding reception here back in 1974. So when I come back to Lansing and I review, it's almost as I'm reviewing it as my own community. So as a consultant, I do this for a number of communities, and I make sure that I bring the same quality that I do from anywhere else. So as stating that planning and zoning is a component of economic development. It begins with what you can and cannot do. I work closely with Lieutenant Wright as well as Commissioner Zorn to ensure that what you can do in the building works, but also what you can do on land if that is appropriate. So with that, planning and zoning, we have two tools that we use. One is the Village Comprehensive Plan. That's the planning aspect of it. And zoning is controlled by our zoning ordinance. And I will go through both of those items. A comprehensive plan, for those who are not familiar with it, it is a guide. It is a document that is prepared for each specific village or municipality that kind of outlines what should we be. What should we be in the future? What should we look forward to in terms of land development? What should it look like in terms of streetscape and so forth? So the village has adopted over the years a comprehensive plan, and we use that when anyone comes in and initially says that they want to develop. One of the key components that we have in there is the land use plan. And what this does is identifies all property within the village and even outside the village limits on what should happen. Some of the land is already currently developed, so it'll say whether it's existing, residential, but also this helps us when we have vacant parcels or redevelopment of parcels to kind of guide us on what should happen. As you can see, there's all different colors and there's a key. Those that are the lighters of oranges and yellows are the residentials, and then the deeper colors into the red go into commercial, and then manufacturing and open space. The other key component and tool is the zoning ordinance. This is the part that helps us carry out our comprehensive plan. And how that happens is that the ordinances are rules and regulations. Just like the code book for the building codes, ours is a little bit smaller, almost about 200 pages, and it goes through all of the different components of what you can, essentially, layman's terms, what you can and cannot do on your property. So with that, we have what we use is the zoning map. Similar to the land use map that we saw in the comprehensive plan, this is actually what's happening on the property. So this is exactly how it is zoned, and those districts translate to our use table, which we'll get into a little bit. A lot of the times, as you can see, that we only have the colors that are within the municipal boundaries. Unlike our comprehensive plan, we can plan for what's outside our municipal boundaries for annexations. The zoning ordinance includes uses, permitted and special, and use regulations. It also goes into bulk regulations, parking, landscaping, lighting, and signage. In terms of uses, that's the most important when we come down to economic development, is that the building, we can go ahead and fire can say that you have to do X, Y, and Z for the building to be used as that use. Building department can say you need to do X, Y, and Z to bring it up to that use. But at the end of the day, can you do that particular operation on that property? And that's where we get into the use tables. It's brought into two individuals. One, permitted use, that's a use by right, as well as then special uses, those which are not typical in those areas, and I always say, cause us to pause. We have to think a little bit whether it's appropriate, and I'll go through each individual one. Permitted use by right. Those are those that are typical within here. So if we have in our commercial district, one would think that as commercially that we would have retail businesses such as, a shoe store or a bookstore. Those that are conducted wholly within the building and those that are considered typical. We also, there's no special zoning request. They can go through the business license process and then meet with the other departments to ensure that they're meeting those standards. But it does, when I say it does not have a special zoning request, it does not have to appear before the Planning Zoning Board of Appeals as well as in the Village Board for consideration. Special uses are those uses that cause us, as I said, to pause. They're not those that are typical. Doesn't mean that they can't happen in those particular locations, but we want to take a closer look at them. We look at them because generally they're uses that we lump into special use because maybe they have a traffic impact. For example, a daycare we generally see as a special use because you have that impulse traffic, right? You have that morning drop-off and that lull in the afternoon and that afternoon pickup. So you want to ensure, as well as then with whom we're working with, children, that there's a safe path of travel, depending to make sure that that's an appropriate location. Noise is another item that we do look at as a special use in terms of those. An example of noise could be, say, a drive-through. We want to ensure where it's located, that it isn't too close to residential, or that we design it in such a way to have the impact. As interesting as it sounds, we actually do get into where's the location of the speaker, because we can hear, we don't hear everybody ordering their, their Big Mac, because that sound can travel. But we also look at what can we do to reduce that impact. Is it through landscaping? Is it through fencing? Is it simply by turning the drive-through just a little bit to make sure that it isn't impactful? Parking is another one that we look at in terms of why something may be a special use. We look at fitness facilities as a special use because of the parking, mostly because you have that impulse, right? It's not like you're going in and running into the grocery store and maybe there just for 20 minutes. Usually workout places have about a good, 45 to an hour, there's classes. So there's that different type of parking need and also circulation, as well as in hours of operation. Some like to work out at 5 a.m. Not me, but also just to get that idea of what's happening in there, and we look at that. Also, we look at those components of businesses that are conducted outside. That's why it might be a special use. So if you're coming in with some type of manufacturing use and you're storing material outside, we're going to look at it as a special use. And the reason is because you're taking that business inside, outside, and the impact that it has. Sometimes it's just ensuring that we're keeping up with the streetscape. Sometimes it's an environmental. Where are we putting those, those raw materials? But also outside of manufacturing, we even have it in our commercial district. And that's now everybody, as we go through difference, we want to have outdoor sales and so forth. So we want to ensure that we have a safe path of travel for those individuals coming to and from, and want to make sure that we have an idea of what's being stored. So with that, another component of a special use is a plan development. And what a plan development is an opportunity for the village to work in conjunction with the developer by looking at the plan holistically. For example, one good kind of development that's a good example of a planning development is up at the landings. You have a bunch of strips as well as then individual businesses with a number of outlet buildings in front. All that parking and all that circulation works together. If we were to individually design it, it wouldn't function in that capacity because they wouldn't have shared parking. So we use plan developments as an opportunity to step back and say, how can we make it work as one, as opposed to having a drive-through and a drive-through that we see sometimes along Torrance in some of those smaller lots. So that's a special use as well. With a special use, you must appear before the Planning Board, Zoning Board of Appeals, and they are a recommending body. Special use is held as a public hearing. If you haven't been through the public hearing process, it has some requirements that we have to comply through state statute, and one of them is that we have to notify in the newspaper 15 days ahead of the hearing, and that is something that we cannot waiver. So a lot of times we'll get applications come in and say, okay, I'm ready. And we say, okay, that's great, but we have this time period that we have to comply with. So that is our biggest time constraint that we have. At that hearing, you'll go ahead and explain your project to the commission, as well as then we'll go ahead and give the technical review. And at the end of there, they'll also ask for public comment, which we can never predict, but we try to do our best to provide a product that would be best for the community. They are a recommending body to the village board, so any recommendation to approve or deny, this gets then forwarded on to the village board, who is the final decision maker in which an ordinance is created. Here is an example, or this is actually the use table that we have. We most recently went through an update. We still have more to update in terms of the code because every business changes. We're getting new businesses, new ideas that are coming through that are not our atypical that we've had in the past. So we try to keep moving and creating new uses to fit everything. Now, it doesn't always fit into a nice little box, but we at least try to encompass everything. So here's an example for a table. When you have an S, that means it's a special use, and a P means it's permitted, and if it's blank, that means that it is not allowed in that particular district. And the top are all the different zoning districts that we have. Your R usually designates your residential, your C, or your Bs are your business, and then we have M1, which is our manufacturing. So I'll try to use an example, a quick one. We'll use, for example, automotive, service and repair, major and minor. As you can see, automotive repair, major and minor are special uses in our business districts, but they're permitted in our manufacturing, and that is minor. And for example, we have definitions that go ahead for it. Minor would be something like an oil change or a tire rotation. Okay? We call those as special uses in our business districts because sometimes they have different components to it, right? They may have storage of vehicles. We want to make sure that we have adequate circulation. Sometimes they do come with noise, so we want to make sure that we're being cognizant and respectful to our neighbors. But we put it as a permitted use in our manufacturing because that's where we anticipate those types of uses happening. But then we also have major repair, which might be a body shop, something a little bit more intense. We do not consider it in our business districts, but we do allow for it in our manufacturing district. Again, because of the different locations and its different component. Usually in terms of planning, we look at having residential transition to commercial, from commercial to manufacturing. So we want to protect our residents as much as we can. It's a long list of uses that we have here. As I said, it's always non-encompassing, but we try to do our best. I will go ahead and have you focus on that last column there where it says particular sections as I kind of scroll through. And those are use regulations. We've identified that there's some uses that we want to put forth different requirements. For example, if it's for, we'll go back to the daycare, we require that they provide us a plan, a circulation plan, and an understanding of what's happening. So those are particular requirements that they have to do at times of submittal. Also, through the approval process of the special use, that gives the village the opportunity to place additional regulations on it. Say it's understanding hours of operation, or it's saying, you know, for example, if we have an outdoor seating somewhere, we're not going to want it to be open till 2 a.m. if it's near residents. So we kind of have that ability that the state gives us to establish different regulations specific to maybe general uses or also that individual property. It's kind of as we move away from the uses, what has to be understood is that when there is a special use, it is given particularly and specifically to that business operation that is there. So if a new business comes in, we have to review it as a special use. Additional regulations that I've identified that are kind of those key components that we look at, we have to look at things like bulk regulations is a technical term that we use, and that is setbacks. How far can it be from the property of the building? How tall can it be? How much can we cover on the land? So those are part of that we look at when we get back to specifics on what can happen. And each different zoning district has different requirements for that. The next are parking. Parking, we look at parking as a big time. As I've said, you've heard me say part of the special use process, but we identified number of required parking spaces. So required parking space for retail is different for an automotive use, which is different from an indoor recreation facility. We also do parking lot design. In the slide at the corner, the bottom right, is a chart that we use to help design parking lots. If it is parallel parking, or it's standard parking, or it's perpendicular parking, what we do in terms of how long, how width, the aisles, and all of that goes into play on safety to make sure that we provide maneuverability that is safe for those coming in to the facility. Landscaping. Actually, this is probably one of my favorite parts because we can take something and really make our stamp on it and how it should look. We do have specific requirements in terms of how much landscaping is required, how much green space is required between. We also then go into how many bushes have to be. And all of that comes into kind of setting the tone and what is anticipated for that streetscape that I had mentioned in that comprehensive plan. So this is our opportunity. We work closely with the engineers to make sure that we aren't creating any sightline issues or that I'm not putting them in a place where, you know, maybe there's a utility, so I have to kind of argue with them about that a little bit, but it's kind of that balance between both. The next is lighting. Lighting is a key component as well. We look at that in terms of safety on site, because we want to make sure that those individuals who are going from building to parking have a safe path of travel, but also we want to be cognizant of the neighbors, what's happening around it, make sure that that light does not spill into that neighbor's property, so we have specific regulations that we look into that. And lastly, the next one is signage. Signage, as was noted, that is a permit. They do review that. But in the zoning aspects of it, we look at it, where is it located? We have a required setback. How big is it? What is it gonna say? How bright is it? And we look at it in terms of what's happening on the building, but what's also happening as a monument sign. And that's kind of one of the key components, I think, of economic development, is that everybody wants to know what their signage is. And they actually want the biggest and the most signage as they possibly can. So we do have regulations, and we do work with individuals. Kind of going back to another component that it is, it's safety. Make sure that we're putting that monument sign in such a way that it isn't going to create a traffic hazard that you're able to see around it as well. So one item is to kind of continue on the zoning aspect, probably not as great, or a little bit into the special uses, but it's variances. And I'll just touch on it briefly. As we've said, that not everything fits in one nice little package. Lots are different, particularly when we come to a community like Lansing, where we have a lot of older lots, a lot of older developments that maybe don't fit into our current code. So we have a variation process, which allows an applicant to come before the Planning Zoning Board of Appeals and the Village Board to ask for consideration to modify the requirement for that particular property for that particular reason only. So it is kind of those opportunities for that not one size fits all. So here are just a couple examples. We'll go through most recent projects that we have and how we looked at them. So here's a special use for Mingles Restaurant. Now, kind of brought this up as an existing business. You know, they just recently opened after they were through the process. Everybody likes outdoor seating everywhere we go. Particularly after COVID, everybody wants to have that component to it. And it's great because it brings that pedestrian feel to our shopping centers and to our downtown areas. But there's components that we have to think about it. So we make outdoor seating a special use for, one, understand where it is, two, how big, three, what hours, where are we looking at, and the impact that it might have on the surrounding properties. So example, Mingles, if anyone has been there, it has that long arcade. Well, they wanted to be able to use part of it there, which is great because it's covered from the sun and the rain. But we had concerns in working with them to ensure that we had a safe path of travel for those who are going from the different businesses that are around there. So we work with them, they provide us with a plan, they also provide details of what the fencing is gonna look like, because mostly is that we want to ensure that it's a defined space, but also when there's alcohol use to it, we want to make sure that we're kind of identifying so that it doesn't spill out into other areas. We also looked at how is it going to just look overall. So they're providing planters and so forth, and they provide all of this information, and then we go forward and bring it to the Planning and Zoning Board of Appeals, and they review it. We then go ahead and recommend it to the Village Board. They did approve this, so anything that is approved in conjunction with this, how big it is, what the fencing is supposed to look like, they as a business are responsible for providing that when they have that outdoor seating done. So whenever you come through a process, how it's going to look, how it's going to function is important and pivotal and goes along with those approval process. Kind of a larger scale of approval process that also dealt with two special use process is that of the Chick-fil-A. As we had mentioned, I think everybody is anticipating it. I think every community, every time we get a Chick-fil-A, is anticipating it. They are in gangbusters lately. So they're really great to work with. They understand the process. They knew exactly what they had to do. So with that, because they understood that they would have a drive-through, not one but two, because they're so popular and they have it down pat. So as I mentioned, a special use for a drive-through, that's what it is. But also they had an outdoor seating component, so we wanted to understand that. So they had to come through the planning and zoning process through the PZBA as well as on the village board. With that, we bring everything together to give it kind of that package deal. We look at the architecture. How does it look? What's it gonna look like from Torrance? That's the most component that we wanna understand. Does it meet the building material requirements? That's about as much as I get into the building material, and then I hand it off to the building commissioner. We're gonna look at signage. What kind of signage is it? How tall is it? What is it gonna look like? Where's it gonna go? And everybody, when they come in through, has a particular branding, and they wanna meet it, but we have to make sure it meets with our code. So we work back and forth, try to work with our codes as well as then for the individuals, because we understand signage for a Chick-fil-A is right off the interstate, is different than the signage of someone on Ridge Road. We also look at landscaping. Here, they had a certain requirement of green. With being so close to Torrance, there were some requirements of trees that would have been along the parkway. We actually worked with them to incorporate them within. So this will be a great amenity, is driving right off of going south on Torrance, because it is going to have so much more green than it has now. A lot of landscaping at the corners and even as you enter into the shopping center. A bigger scale of an approved project for is True Hotel. This is that component, that special use that I said was at planned development. And we look at this as planned development because, as we know, there's the old bank building that is here. This is the shopping center where like Royal Bistro is. So it actually all kind of functions as one. So we look at it as an opportunity to go ahead and see how it can function, how access works, and so forth. So we brought this into the planned development because of also opportunities. We wanted a little bit of flexibility with our code because we recognize the residents that are right here. And a hotel is tall. So we want to ensure that we took a moment to figure out the best location for it on site and to reduce any potential impact that it might have by, as you can see, this is all green. This here is green. We did our best. We walked out there, I think, not once, not twice, to see what trees we could preserve. How is it going to look? We would go into different parts of the site to see, do I think I'm going to be looking into the 3rd floor or the 4th floor? So it is something that we really do think about and to find the specific location as it being an economic development because of that brings the hotel, but also we want to make sure that we protect our residents. So with this, we also look at the architecture as we have there and the signage that we have. And as I said, this is the site plan to give you an idea of what we reviewed. It tells us how big the parking stalls are, how much far away it is, where's the drive access. So we work in conjunction with both fire and building to make sure that they're checking their boxes, but also checking our boxes that we have for requirements. So overall, that's kind of the planning and zoning aspect of it in terms of economic development. We try to work closely to recognize each individual business's branding and desires, but also make sure that we do keep the integrity that Lansing has in terms of the new developments and kind of setting that tone in for those along different parts, the streetscape of Torrance to the streetscape of Ridge Road as well. So if you have any specific questions, I will be here and can certainly answer. Planning and zoning is never as exciting as building and fire, but it's what works. They make it work, we make it pretty, that's what I say. So, thank you.
All right, Maura, thank you so much. She is 1,000% right. We actually did, Maura and I were in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th floors of the old bank building, which is just south of where the True Hotel is going to be. And we were using the vantage points of those floors to look to the west to see, because there's a residential housing development just west of where the True Hotel is going to be. And we were there to kind of get a vantage point of how are guests in the hotel going to view those people's backyards, and are the people in those backyards going to feel like their privacy is being compromised by that hotel? So that was a real thing we did, and a lot of fun. I won't tell you how out of breath I was when we made it up to the 3rd and 4th floor, but let's just say I knew I needed to get to the gym after that day. We're going to break at this point, so if staff has other food to bring out, I know they're kind of coming out with the salad. We're going to give you a chance to eat. We'll take about a 15-minute break. We'll let our speakers get some food in them, and then we're going to come back. I hope you enjoyed the first part. You see again what goes on behind the scenes. Planning with our zoning code to find out if your business can locate in a specific area, pre-development inspections, and then a special use and variance review to make sure your site looks good, and then the nuts and bolts of the building and the fire code. So some of the background, some of the detail that happens with economic development before you open your doors. Enjoy your break. We'll be back in about 15 minutes to continue our presentation. Thanks. Okay, so we're going to kick off the second half of our program here, and obviously we talked about building codes, fire codes, site plan reviews and special uses and all that stuff in the first half. Now we're going to talk a little bit, before we get into incentives, we're going to talk a little bit about what's the village doing to bring businesses to Lansing, right? In the marketing world, I learned a long time ago from talking to Kim Kozlowski and Mary Patchen from the Southland Convention and Visitors Bureau, and they're both here today. I learned that we call these types of places destination drivers. Places you have in your town that bring people from outside, bringing them in. And we have 3 of those venues. You may have heard of Fox Point. Hopefully many of you have seen a concert or been at an event at Fox Point. That is one of our drivers. And so we have 3 of them that we call, that's part of our internal development, things we're working on to bring people into Lansing. So Ken Reynolds is our Director of Venue Operations, and Ken, a longtime Lansing resident, former English teacher at TF South, former Dean at TF South, also the former varsity baseball coach at TF South, was also the mayor's executive assistant before we moved him into his current role as our Director of Venue Operations. Please welcome Ken Reynolds.
I was like, long-time Lansing resident just means old, but I appreciate that. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here today. Many of you I do know, some I'm looking forward to meeting as I kind of go over what our 3 primary destination drivers are. And so I think you heard in the first half of the program, if you want to come here, what do? How do you get officially, accepted and recognized as a business? My angle on economic development is these 3 venues. How do we drive people here to attend events at these things and then see all of the businesses that are being developed, whether they're in progress or whether they are existing businesses, and then get those guests and residents to spend their money, at those businesses. And I will be honest, I take great joy in people that used to live here coming back and then saying, "Oh, I didn't know you had this in Lansing." And yes, we do. We sure do. Now, please go spend your green money over at any of those businesses on Ridge Road or Torrance or wherever it may be. So, I know earlier it was mentioned that Randall was in uniform, and I was going to do the shirt and tie today, but this is pretty much my uniform in the months of June, July, and August. If you are at Fox Point in particular, you know that our colors are black and orange. So I have been in this garb for somewhere in the neighborhood of about 30 to 35 events over the last 3 months. I do have some other uniforms. This was one of my highlights of the summer when I got to dress as a member of ABBA when I introduced Dancing Queen, which was one of my favorite concerts of the year at Fox Point. So I don't know that I have Benny or Bjorn's physique, but it was fun that night doing that. So as Dan alluded to, we have our 3 primary drivers: Fox Point, Ford Hangar, and the Lansing Sports Complex. Each of them is in a different phase of the development right now. Everything from Fox Point, which is only 5 to 6 years old, to the Ford Hangar, which is a nearly 100-year-old building that is being converted and renovated into an event venue. Sports Complex, kind of in the middle on the calendar. The Village has always owned it, and there have been other organizations that have worked with the Village over the years to make programs exist there. We still own it, and we are now running it, and I'll give a couple highlights for that particular venue. So, for Fox Point itself, we just wrapped up, again, what was our 6th season, but really our 5th, because the COVID year, we only had a couple of events we were able to do. Our Wednesday night concert series ran from June the 5th through September the 11th. It's probably what we are most known for after 5 years. We literally have every Wednesday, we have a band, entertainment, we have an opening act and a headlining act of various genres, musical genres, that we offer to our guests. And then we also have concessions, we have dessert vendor out there, we have a microbrew, our own alcohol and food. So all of that is what helps pay for Fox Point and the particular events. We have ticketed events. We call them our Friday Night Lights series. This is where we have two, maybe more upscale headlining bands, and they play 90-minute sets. Our ticket sales for those were solid this year. One in particular was the most successful one we've had. And again, that's kind of an example of giving the guests two really good bands that play in a lot of areas in Chicagoland and Northwest Indiana, and they're getting that for only $15 combined if they buy their tickets in advance. One of our cultural highlights, and this is one of the mayor's favorites, is the Northwest Indiana Symphony that completed their 4th year at Fox Point this year. We had an unbelievable weather. Actually, we've had good weather for every single one we've had, but this year it was perfect. We had about 1,700 people there for the symphony. Completely different vibe, and that's the key to this. How do you draw a variety, spectrum of guests? You offer a variety of events, whether that be musical genres or different types of events that I'll touch a little bit on that are not musical, that also get as many fresh faces into the venue as possible and have people come back. We have kind of a saying here that we get one chance to make a first impression. That's not an original expression, but it's what we want to do at Fox Point. And I do love when people come back and go, wow, I didn't know this was here. And I said, yeah, it sure as hell is here, and we're going to keep making it better. One event we were very proud of this year was a Cultural Celebration Day. This, again, is a type of event where we're looking to draw multicultural guests and also multicultural performers and vendors and food vendors to Fox Point to be able to introduce, again, a wide spectrum of individuals and cultures to our venue. And we worked our butt off. If anybody attended, they know that August 17th was one of the rainiest days we had all summer long. We got downpoured on 4 times in 6 hours, but the event itself was still very successful. We are committed to this event, and it will be coming back in 2025 on June the 21st, right now? My memory? Another event, Mexico and El Corazon. We set a new attendance record this year. We had 2,500 people at this event. It was a fantastic evening, again, a great weather night, and this is a celebration of Hispanic culture, music, dance, and we worked. We worked because they can put away the beverages, I'm just going to put it that way, and it was all good. And we had a great night, but we were exhausted by the end of the night, but it was well worth it to see so many families, and again, first-time people that haven't been to Fox Point for other events be there this year. We have 2 big events that are still coming up this year. Our Fox Point Trick or Treat. I want to make sure all the business owners in the room that don't know about this. This was an event we started in the COVID year to try and have something when everything was just starting to open back up again. And what we do is we basically have schools, organizations, churches, businesses, nonprofits. Doesn't cost anything. You simply register online and you bring a table there. You can decorate it. You can be in costume. And if you build it, they do come. We average about 1,500 to 2,000 people at this event. And they come in our main gate and they work their way around the perimeter of our entire venue. And the only thing it will cost you is make sure you bring your candy. Because if you're the one that doesn't have candy, they will skip your table and go to the next table that has candy. So we had no idea, just to show you how sometimes an idea can come, as we sat planning, what can we do in 2020? We came up with this event. Not only was it successful in 2020, when everybody was looking for something to do, it has held its strength in 21, 22, and 23, and we expect it again this year. We already have close to 40 vendors. They're not really selling, but organizations, registrants, if you will, that are signed up for that. If you're interested, please visit foxpoint.org, or you can talk to Donna Stucker in the back or me. We can help you get registered. We'd love to have you be a part of that event. Great way to publicize your business and get the word out about whatever you have. You can talk to the adults while the kids get the candy. It's 2-tiered. And then finally at Fox Point, our winter holiday kickoff this year. We have always had in Lansing our historical tree lighting that usually is right after Thanksgiving. Because Thanksgiving is so late this year, we are moving it up to the day after Thanksgiving. And we are adding a second night of entertainment, not so much entertainment, but attractions that will be there for our guests. What we're trying to do is build up this winter market, if you will. There will be a tent with vendors underneath it on Randolph Street. We will have things. On the private side, you can rent out Fox Point. Now it's important that we get calls, you know, I want to have grandma's 50th birthday or 70th birthday party there. You can do it, but it's a pretty big place to have 20 people in. So we have to kind of separate, and this is not to be negative in any way, but we don't consider ourselves a park, we're a venue. So if you haven't been there, I encourage you to visit our website and look at our venue and the options that you have to be able to rent it out. So for example, this year, our Human Relations Commission had an event there called Lansing. It was music for the soul, inspirational music in May. Memorial Junior High held their graduation there this year. Fantastic event. The weather it wanted to be bad on them, and then it hung in there, so we were lucky. We had a private picnic in Blanc, those of you that know those. We had 500, a sorority from Joliet that had a 500-person picnic in Blanc at the venue. The District 158, when they just started back to school a couple weeks ago, they had a staff wellness day out there. They had a half day of school, and then the teachers all came out. They had a live band, they had food for them, they had vendors. It was a great event. Many of the teachers said, is that bar window going to be open? We said, no, that bar window is not going to be open today. You're on the clock. But then they said, can we come back at the end of the year and have an event? I said, we'll be here for you. Just let us know, and that's completely different. And then, as many of you know, this weekend, Lansing Association for Community Events has their Autumn Fest that we co-sponsor with them, and that's coming up this Friday, the 27th and 28th. They have a great program planned for this year as well. So when I call these rentals, we work with nonprofits, we work with schools, but then we also work with private. It can be a family, it can be a business, or it can just be a group that's looking to have a venue. And as long as they conform to our usage policy and we get it worked out, we have these events. We had 9 of them this year. And that includes the Chamber, who just had their loop bike ride this past weekend. Congrats to Susan and Laura and the group for another great event out there. It's fun to see. Those are some serious bikers, by the way. Those guys had some knee things and pants and everything else. I said, have at it. Guys like, you want to join? I said, I do not. I will drive in my car behind you. I'm not driving that far on a bike. Maybe I could get this thing to go down. But it's cool to see. And the event that you see here is actually an event from last year. So in the spirit of working off some of your lunch, here's a little Peloton bike ride that was held last year. I just got to click it down. I literally got tired watching this that day. And they had their instructors, the leaders up there, and they brought in about 75 to 100 Peloton bikes. They got after it for about 2 hours, which was about an hour and 53 minutes more than I wanted to. It was a really cool event, but it gives you an idea. There's a wide variety of things that can be done at Fox Point, whether that's under our pavilion area, which you see in the back a little bit for those that haven't been there, or if it's on our main stage and infield area. We can customize an event that will work for you. Coming soon, I see Henry what is he, just Henry? Henry the Plane? I was looking for a fancy name, just Henry the Plane, gotcha.
Yeah, we're not that.
So, when Susan told me Saturday that there's Henry the Plane, I said, well, he's going to have to meet Henry the Fox, Henry T. Fox, who we are having a full mascot, a real college costume type mascot that we are hoping to debut at Halloween. I know you won't tell anybody, you'll keep it in this room, right? Because we want to surprise the kids. But this is just another way of marketing and publicizing Fox Point in general, and you'll see Henry. If you know anyone that really likes to play these types of roles, you can give me a call. They need to be between 5'8" and 6'1", and we're looking for no felony convictions, so make sure you know that. So we really look forward. This is going to be a lot of fun. Transitioning to the Lansing Sports Complex up at 16700 Chicago Avenue. This is kind of an overhead of our athletic facilities. You see 4 ball fields, and then in the upper left there you can see what used to be tennis courts, and they were converted to outdoor volleyball courts 20 plus years ago, and they're still used for that today. This is an area that you talk about different types of things that draw people here. Music, those types of things obviously draw people. Specific events draw individuals, and then you have sports and youth sports in particular. And so those of you that have children or grandchildren or whatever it may be in youth sports, you know that a lot of this has shifted to the travel world, to travel sports. Everybody's got a team, that nobody has a home because everybody comes from a different city. So one of the things that we are doing is starting to put money into this entire facility to not only always have a place for Lansing registrants to play. I'm talking Little League, Babe Ruth baseball, not Babe Ruth, girls softball, Lansing volleyball. But then specifically having groups come, for example, we have a travel softball program that has come to us from ALSIP and is now using our softball field as their training center in the fall. Those are the types of things we want to get, long-term commitments into the venue that are obviously paying us to use it, but are also then publicizing the fact that this venue exists. And so we just had a meeting yesterday looking for some grant money that we are hoping to be able to secure in the next year or two. I'm talking real dollars. And then we also have some other strategies to be able to pour some money into the facility to get it. It's in good shape, but it's like a car. It needs a little bit of love, and we're going to give it more than a little bit of love to get it back up to speed. Again, who's playing there now? You see, like Little League girls softball, volleyball. We've had rentals from high school teams, travel baseball and softball tournaments. We're still working on that part of it. Summer college baseball leagues is something that we have a real good lead on for our big field, our Major League Diamond. And then even groups like Roy Hobbs Men's League Baseball. I've also been contacted by a gentleman who represents the Negro League World Series that they may want to bring to the sports complex. So getting these types of individuals who may not be from Lansing into Lansing, spending their money in your businesses is what we are looking to do. And then there is the Ford Hangar on the south end of town. So ironically, these 3 venues are almost directly in a line. The sports complex, Fox Point, is a little bit shifted east of that line, and then the Ford Hangar is straight down Burnham by Glenwood Lansing Road. It is, for those that don't know the history, it is coming up on its 100th anniversary. I always kid with the mayor, if it was called the Johnson Hangar or the Smith Hangar, I don't know that anybody would be as interested. But the fact that it's called the Ford Hangar and it's connected to Henry T. Ford obviously gets people interested. Since 2017, we have been working and working and working to turn this hangar into an event venue. And this is the building, folks, that we get the most interest in. We get the most calls about, can I have my blank there? Everything from a photo shoot to jewelry commercials to weddings. We have another wedding coming up on October 19th. I'll show you video from the first wedding that was held in the hangar 2 falls ago. We have a motto that she cleans up really nice. And when our airport staff cleans it, power washes it, gets it ready, it is exactly in this lane of what people are looking for. Where can I have an event that's unique? Where can I have an event that no one else has ever had something at? My daughter just got married 3 months ago. I don't want 4 white walls, Dad. I know, okay. So we had to search and look for a venue, and we found one, and we loved it up in the northwest part of Illinois. But this venue, the Ford Hangar, and what it can provide is really the future of this particular venue is, when I say it's unknown, the ceiling for it is unknown, because the more we can do to make this, people want to be near this venue. And the large part of it is the history. It's also at an airport, and people love airports. So The last bride and groom that got married there did a first fly instead of a first dance. So they had their guests out on our cocktail area. They took off, they're both pilots, they took off to the west, circled around, did about 15 minutes, came back in, and I said, well, that's pretty cool. So to let people know about this venue and where we're at, Donna Stuckert, our Director of Communications, worked very hard along with myself to debut the Ford Hangar website, fordhangar.org. I would encourage you to check it out and look at the variety of events that we've already held there since 17. There's a great promo video that our guys at L&N put together in IT that can be found online, our social media accounts for the hangar. And I'm very happy to announce that we have now the roof, due to Dan's hard work and Brian Hannigan, our finance director, we secured almost $600,000 in grant money, and now the roof, I can tell brides it's not going to leak on your head. You know, that's a nice, encouraging thing for them to hear. So again, this wedding that we have October 19th, the roof is now completely restored. It is a building that has challenges because of its age. We are continuing to meet those challenges with our renovation approach. If you want to rent the Ford Hangar, it's very similar to Fox Point. You can go to the Ford Hangar website. There's a rentals tab up in the upper left. That's the link for it there. And we do it a little bit differently. Depending on what you want to have, we have rates for up to 2 hours. And then if the event is longer than that, obviously a little bit different rate. So we don't want to, you know, if somebody wants to have a quick photo shoot for prom or something, we're not going to charge them the same rate as we would for a wedding. So our destination drivers, Fox Point, the Ford Hangar, and the sports complex, all bring kind of a different and unique aspect to economic development. My job and my goal is to drive people here not only for the first time and to be impressed, but also to get them to come back. And we're doing that at Fox Point. We're trying to do that at the sports complex and the hangar as well. And I will tell you that the hangar is the one part of the pun. It will take off as we continue to work on the restoration and the ability to add even more guest enhancement to what we can offer. So that is my time. I appreciate your time very much, and I will turn it back over to Administrator Podgorski.
Thanks, Ken. Great job. Exciting events happening all the time in our destination drivers, and Ken left you the information on how to book an event out there. Okay, so we've talked about building and fire prevention bureau and special uses and what we can do to bring development here. Is it that easy, right? Is it as simple then as somebody calling us and going through that process? Many times it's not, because development is competitive, right? The economic development climate out here is very, very competitive, and you need to be competitive. If you're not willing to extend some incentives at times, then businesses will look elsewhere. We are right here on the border of Illinois and Indiana, and the fight is real. Property tax structure in Indiana, much more conducive to business. We live and breathe that fight every day. We don't just talk about it. If you are 10 or 15 miles west of here, you can talk about it, but it's probably not affecting you as much as it does us. We have lost business to Indiana in the past. Land of Frost, which still has their manufacturing facility here in Lansing, they moved their corporate offices to Munster. And you'll see, the Young Furniture and Exteriors is located on Route 41 out there in St. John, and there's others. So the fight is real, and we have to be competitive, and we are, and we're willing to do that. So so we're going to start talking about some of the incentives that are available to you and also to new businesses that want to come here. I'm going to bring up Jack Hines. Jack Hines is our development consultant. I would call him an expert in the Cook County Class A Tax Incentive Program. He really is our lead on the new inquiries. If I'm not taking it, I'm flipping it over to Jack. He will work with petitioners to find them a location if they're interested in coming here. And we talk just about daily. And sometimes I might be emailing at some crazy hours, and the only person I know who sometimes is going to email me back at that crazy time is Jack. So please welcome Jack Hines to talk about Class 8 and the Enterprise Program.
Hello again, my name is Jack Hines. One thing I just want to mention before we get into this, we've discussed a couple times like destination locations, marketing, things like that all go into it. One of the biggest proponents of marketing for anyone, especially the Village of Lansing or any other town, is its current businesses that are already here. And that's why these types of events are very good for the town and to meet and greet, because no matter what type of business is coming here, it's always good to know the other businesses that are there. There's a good chance that some business wants to come to the village, they're going to talk to a business already in town. How is it to be there? What's go? Is the code department, the fire department, oh, they're easy to deal with. They get back to you 24 hours, they get back to you quickly. So it's great to have a partnership with the businesses, because you guys are actually the best marketing tool that we can put every piece of paper together, but the marketing tools of you guys saying, or you guys and ladies saying, hey, this is a good place to be, makes our job 100 times easier. So we're going to go in and talk about incentives. So you get the building codes, all that kind of stuff, and it's mine is how I can save you money. That's a little bit easier for people to listen to than the codes and everything like that. So, well, first thing we're going to talk about, I didn't get a photo up here. I don't think my charming face needed it. Okay, enterprise zone. We're going to talk about an enterprise zone here. The entire village, industrial and commercial areas are in an enterprise zone. And what that means, it's a state incentive, which, unlike other incentives that you may go to, the one thing that this is, you do not have to go in front of the board or anything like that. You just fill out a paper, you're already in this. So a couple basic incentives that come out of this thing here are, number one, you fill out an application. It's a very easy CAP application. It's a 3-page application, simple. What happens is, at this point in time, you don't pay the state sales tax, right there, the 6.25 sales tax on building materials you're going to buy to rehab your facility, do anything inside your facility with this. A little secret though that a lot of them don't know is that on the state side, the 6.25%, when you go to Home Depot to buy the wood or whatever you're going to do, that lady behind the counter doesn't know that it's only the state sales tax. So a lot of times it's the entire sales tax. So it can save you up to work with 10% in tax purposes when you're going to do something to your facility. This is on the state side of it. You're going to see types of things like equipment and everything like that. And I don't want to bore you with all those types of things. The sales tax one is a very simple one. If you have a business, or if you know of a business in town that's going to be doing a larger project, I brought my business card here, you guys can all get a hold of me to talk to me a little bit more. But when you get into the machinery, equipment, utility tax, things like that, it's based on the size of the project you're doing. A lot of them, or the job creation. It could be up to 200 jobs, or $20 million, $30 million, which a lot of those things go to like larger companies. Like we were talking Ford Motor Company gets a lot of those incentives, but it's not for the mom and pop. But the sales tax is where you can save it on there. Locally, these are the local incentives you can get to. Machinery, this is the state. This is what I meant by the other ones here, job tax credit. Those are on larger projects, but if you have any questions on those, I'll gladly answer them. Certain things are at a local level, certain are on the state level, but you can see the different types of incentives, and I said everyone qualifies for at least the sales tax, and we're going to get into the local one as well. This is your local incentives. The abatement of prior, we'll talk about the waiver of business licensing. You get a 50% reduction in permit costs. So when you apply for this thing. So right at the bat, so that would be the Zorin question. Whatever your permits are, they're cut in half right off the bat. So it makes it a little bit easier, more efficient and cost savings, which I said that I got the good part about this. Abatement of property taxes. This one is used on a case-by-case basis. It can be. So there are multiple taxing agencies, as you well know, in your property taxes, that since you are in an enterprise zone, you can actually talk to those taxing bodies and ask them for abatement of their taxes. Not saying they're going to say yes to it, But you have the right to go to any one of those taxing bodies and say, can you abate some of this? They have to pass it by their board, but those are certain things that can be used with this. Streamlined building codes, correct, but working with Zoran, the fire code, you don't have to worry about that. They streamline it whether you use this or not. I'm a consultant, I work in different towns, and they are very effective in what they do. Special local financing programs, we're going to get into those a little bit later, but as you can see that these are little simple ways where you can save a few dollars that you may not know about. So after the enterprise zone, the most effective one or the most cost savings is going to be the next thing when we talk about the Class 8 tax incentive. So, I'm sorry, we're going to talk about businesses that have used the enterprise zone first, I apologize. So you can see Starbucks, Chipotle, Taco Bell, Cadeau, mom and pop, from big corporations to mom and pop, everyone can use this incentive. Chick-fil-A, Bevdas, all around town. It's a simple process. Like I said, it's 2 pages, and then there's a subcontractor form. You're in and out within 48 hours. The certificates are issued, and you're good to go. Now, the Cook County Class 8 tax incentive. This is probably one of the larger incentives you're going to be able to get. What this does is everyone here knows that has a business, property taxes are high in the south suburbs of Cook County. One thing that can happen is you can apply for these types of tax incentives. Now, it's a new business coming in, or if you are a current business, if you are doing a substantial rehab, if you are expanding your operation, this is where this stuff can apply. And what it does on a simple basis is you have a valuation of your property taxes, commercial industrial properties that you guys have, it's assessed at 25%. Residential is at 10%. What this incentive does, it takes that 25% assessed valuation down to the 10% residential. It's about a 60% savings in your taxes. As you said, it's qualifying buildings. Now, a lot of you are already currently here. So what that would mean is so the building's technically supposed to be vacant for a year. There is a special circumstance if it were to change hands. So a lot of the current businesses may not be able to apply because you're already here. But if you are planning on expansion or something, or you're going to be doing something to your property of a substantial amount, contact us. We can get your answer quicker. This is what we can do, because you bringing down your property taxes 60% can really help. You can see there it's at 10 years at that 10%. As we talked about, it is 25% as a normal commercial industrial property. So 10 years you keep it at the 10%. The 11th year would go to 15%. 12th year would go to 20, and then it would go back to the 25. So it's a 12-year incentive, but as it states there, it is renewable. So anywhere between year 10 and year 12, you can come back to the village and ask for an extension of this Class 8. One thing I will tell the current businesses that's not on this thing, because we were just talking directly about the Class 8. There is a thing called a SERS. If you are struggling with your business right now, and you have issues, things like that, please contact me. It's an emergency relief act that Cook County has passed. What that does, it's the same thing. It's not a renewable one, but you can get the same year qualifying. It's a 10-year incentive, things like that. If you are struggling, you have to show a little bit more. You have to show financial things like that. But if you are, please contact, or if you know of someone that is in Lansing, please let us know. We want to see them succeed. And this is something that we can walk them through, get them in touch with the county, and get them the proper paperwork and everything to go through. So this here is just a basic wording of what we were talking about, the incentives you can get. So you have a home worth $100,000, and you have a commercial industrial building worth $100,000. This just shows how much money can be saved. So an assessed valuation, if you look at your tax bill or something, it comes in and your market value is $100,000. The assessed value is the 10%. So 10% of that right there, $10,000 of that. Tax rate is a combination of all the taxing districts. It comes out to about 16%. There's different tax rates, parts of it. 16, so $1,600, and then there's a state multiplier. So if you have a house that's worth $100,000, your approximate tax bill is going to be about $48.26. If you have a business, the same business that's worth $100,000, if you're going to sell it, the 25%, 16% is $4,000. It's a $12,000 tax bill. And the mayor's office, Dan, and they understand the struggles of business, and that's why they want to work with the businesses. And this is just showing you a simple little diagram of what's going on. It's a very effective tool. It's actually a simple process too when you get through, and we can walk you through everything, every step of the way. And you can sit here and now we start talking about the projects that have used this. And we have your Popeyes, your Chick-fil-A, your Smoothie King that's coming. They asked for it as well. You have Junk King, because this is for commercial and industrial properties. And then you're going to hear all these, they renewed theirs at that location. So Land of Frost, they've used it. So this is everyone. It's not just a simple hardcore. You can get around and work with different businesses. The one thing we will not see, you'll see tacos and burritos. One thing you won't see on here, and this is the last thing I'm going to talk about is, or Dan's going to talk about, but I'm just going to bring up, is you're not going to see Starbucks, you're not going to see Chipotle, and you're not going to see Taco Bell. And you're sitting there like, why wouldn't they use it? They went in an alternative route, which Administrator Podgorski is going to talk about with TIF money. So there are multiple different ways, and what we're here to show you is, number one, the incentives that are out there for you, but we also want to tell you we want to work with you. Currently, we just don't want to bring in new businesses. We need you to help us bring in new businesses as well. So whatever you need, this kind of stuff, I'm around. Like I said, I have my business card, and now Dan can come up here to talk. There's that smiling face, you can see mine.
All right, Jack, thank you so much. Jack mentioned that one of the ways existing businesses can utilize Class 8 is if you're expanding. A good example of that, some of you know Fine Tune Auto over on Chicago Avenue, Jason Brennan. He expanded his business by buying the building south of his, and he came to the village board for a Class 8 because it was vacant, and he was granted a Class 8 tax designation on that site. So even if you are here, if you're expanding, you can still utilize Class 8. Okay, one other person I wanted to recognize, Ken mentioned her several times in his presentation, and actually she really coordinated the Gov 101 class we did back in February. And if you ever need to be in touch with our Director of Communications, Donna Stuckert is back there. Donna, give a wave. All right. So we're going to now talk about, and we're in the home stretch, by the way. I know you guys have been here a couple hours. We're just about done. We're going to talk about tax increment financing, and some people call it TIF, tax increment financing. If there's one thing I want you to walk away with is understanding that TIF is not a tax break. Okay, it is not a tax break. It's actually just the opposite. Okay, TIF utilizes the increment or the increase in taxes that is generated by new development to be reimbursed some of those expenses of development. There is a but-for argument. But for the TIF, new development would not occur. So anybody ever tells you TIF is a tax break, you can tell them that they're wrong. TIF utilizes the increment or the new taxes generated on new development to reimburse some of those costs of development. So we have a couple of, I'm going to read through this. This is kind of what I just talked about, and I'll explain what the slide means. Tax increment is the difference between the amount of property tax revenue generated before the TIF district was designated and the amount of property tax revenue generated after the TIF's designation. Okay, so it's the increment, what comes after. The establishment of a TIF district does not reduce property tax revenue available to the overlapping taxing bodies. Property taxes collected on properties within the TIF district at the time of its designation continue to go to those taxing districts. Only property taxes generated by the incremental increase are what goes into the TIF. So in this example here, in purple or blue, you have your base EAV, your base property taxes. This represents the taxes being generated in an area designated as TIF. Those continue to go to all the taxing bodies for the life of the TIF. Okay, the TIF designation does not rob those other taxing bodies of that base revenue. The increment is right here. This is what occurs because the municipality has designated a site as a tax increment finance district. New development occurs in the area because of the TIF designation, and then those incremental revenues are captured in the TIF district. After the TIF is over, typically after 23 years, all of the property taxes now get released to all of the taxing bodies. Okay, I know that's a little bit difficult to follow. A little bit, it takes a few stabs at TIF to really understand it. Again, here's the basics of the TIF, and we're going to have almost the same graphic. Initial maximum term of a TIF is 23 years. It can be extended for up to 12 years. When a TIF ends and the municipality's obligations regarding it are wrapped up, the property tax revenues are again shared by all the taxing bodies, and then all the taxing bodies share the expanded base. So again, here's the base EAV, here's the new increment that happens, and then after the TIF is over, here's all the old and the new being released to all the taxing bodies. So you basically have, when a TIF is established, this increment right here. This increment can be used for a couple different things. First of all, one bucket is for base revenues. That's what goes to the local governments and taxing bodies. That's this here. That's your base revenues. Okay? And then the increment, the other bucket here, the incremental revenues, that's for redevelopment within the TIF. And that's the increment right here. So what I want you to think, I'm going to give you a quick example, and then we'll show you some uses. The village is in the process of creating a new TIF district. It's going to be called the South Burnham TIF. Everybody familiar with the old Lansing Country Club? Okay, Lansing Country Club basically is vacant property right now. Any building that was out there has been taken down. So the taxes are very low. They're very low in this area because it's nothing but vacant property. Tax increment financing district is going to be created in this area. Okay, eventually it's going to develop. I don't know whether it's going to be a mixed use, some commercial, maybe some light industrial away from Wentworth Avenue, but there will be development that occurs within this area. It won't come unless there is a TIF district there to help, because you're going to need to put in roads, you're going to need to put in water and sewer and street lighting. The incremental revenues are going to be used to help reimburse the developer the costs of putting in those roads, that water, that sewer, and those street lights. So imagine if the taxes at the Lansing Country Club were $100,000 right now. I'm just making a number up. Imagine if they were $100,000. And then somebody came along and put a mixed-use development, redeveloped the site, and then the taxes on the country club went up to $500,000. Okay, what's the increment? The difference between the 1 and now the 5. That difference, that extra $400,000, that's your tax increment financing. That's the increment that can be used for purposes of the TIF. And now I'm going to tell you exactly what we can do with that increment. These are tax increment financing uses. I've got them kind of put into 4 different pots. New businesses, we can use TIF to help bring new businesses to town. This is the old Baker Square site at 3545 Ridge Road. We used a redevelopment agreement and existing TIF monies to reimburse the developer for their costs to rehab and transform this business, update it, and now we have Honeyberry Cafe, which is doing extremely well at this site. We use TIF we use incremental revenues to purchase the old buildings where Starbucks and Taco Bell and Chipotle are now located. Those business owners did not get utilization of the TIF, but the developer did. The developer who ultimately purchased those sites from us, the benefit that we gave to that developer was that the village purchased those properties and then we leveled them. We basically presented a pad-ready site to that developer. He had then turned around and brought us Starbucks, Chipotle, and Taco Bell. Those businesses did not get a Class 8, as Jack said, so they're paying full boat on their taxes. You'll start to see the incremental revenue in that Torrance Avenue TIF district skyrocket because they're paying full amount of taxes. They can afford to do it because they were given favorable terms on their lease on their triple net lease by the developer because the village bought those old buildings, knocked them down, and then presented it. You can also use TIF for public improvements. Ken came up here and talked about Fox Point. Fox Point was built and paid for entirely with incremental revenues from our Ridge Road TIF district. So if anybody ever tells you, my taxes paid for Ridge Road, you shouldn't charge me to get in there, you tell them that that's true if they live in the Ridge Road TIF district. And if they don't, their taxes had nothing to do with constructing this property. Okay? It was bought and paid for with tax increment financing funds generated in that Ridge Road TIF district. The village owes $0 on this property. And you saw before, if you haven't been out there yourself, you see what it's doing for the village. Building improvements, we're going to talk about this in a few minutes. The village has a facade program, and here's a couple examples. I'm going to come back to that. You can also use TIF for public infrastructure, making improvements to water, sewer, lines, street lights, sidewalks, roads. In this case, also a parking lot. And we're still working on the landscaping there. It's not the greatest look, but it is a new parking lot just south of the Washington Street garage. It's actually a home to our monarch butterfly population. That's what you see looks like weeds in the middle of the parking lot, but it's actually a nature preserve for the butterflies.
Native plants.
Native plants, thank you. That's why the mayor's there correcting me when I screw up. Okay, so last thing, village facade program. This is available to all building owners or tenants. If you're a lessee on Ridge Road or in any of our TIF districts, Torrance Avenue, Bernice, we have a facade program in all of our TIF districts. Okay, this will help you make improvements to the outside of your building. If you don't own it, but you're a tenant, you go to your landlord, you get approval to do this. Okay, we will reimburse you up to 50% of the costs for improvements you make to the outside of the building, the part of the building that's facing Ridge Road or facing Torrance Avenue. So it could be things like an awning, the brickwork, windows, doors, lighting, landscaping, signage. There's an application to fill out. You get a hold of my office, I'll get you the application. What you do is you fill it out, you submit it, we work with you on it, we bring it to the village board. They will most likely consider it and approve it. And we will determine the amount of reimbursement you get. You get 40% no matter who you use to do the work. You get 50% if you use Lansing-based contractors. So you get a little extra incentive if you use Lansing contractors. You do the work, you pay for it, you come back and submit reimbursements, proof of payment, and then we'll reimburse you. So some of the, I'm gonna go back to this, here's what TIF has done. Here's a couple of businesses that have participated in our facade program. MVP Studio and Salon at 3322, that's Michaela Vaughn. That used to be the Chop Shop. She's really made that place look great. This is Roger Woods, Municipal Collections of America for old-time Lansing residents. This is the old fire shop place. You can see how nice that building looks at 3348. And then here's Steppo Construction right next door at 3450. And there's plenty of other examples of businesses that have taken advantage of the facade program. So that's pretty much it. I know we gave you guys a lot to think about. I know we've been at it for over 2 hours up here, but economic development it's complex, it's competitive. We're in a good run of it right now, and it's because of the team that we have. And that doesn't include just those of us staffers. It includes a mayor and an elected board of trustees that understand how important these incentives are, and when we bring them something that makes sense, that they're approving it. So thanks to trustees Elton Russ, Mayor Item, the rest of the board. They understand how competitive development is. They know the position Lansing is in, and they welcome and know that we have to be competitive, and they're willing to give those incentives to bring those businesses here. So on behalf of Zoran and Randall, Maura, Jack, Ken, and myself, I want to thank you guys all for being here. I want to thank Susan again in the chamber, and I'll be happy to turn it over again. I know we've been here a while. Happy to take any questions. Me or any of the other speakers that were here today will take any of your questions, And if you don't have any for the entire room, we'll also be here to answer questions individually if you want to come up to us privately when we're done. So does anybody have any questions they want to ask at this time? Yes, sir.
So since image is very important, what does the Village of Lansing do to make sure that businesses keep up their landscaping in their exterior?
Yep, that's a great question. So what do we do to make sure that people keep up the exterior and keep up the facades and basically keep up their buildings? So that's Zoran's here, and so that's Zoran's department, and we have code enforcement officers that regularly patrol the town, and we'll have many informal discussions with property owners, both commercial, industrial, and residential. We don't want to just maintain the business districts, we want to maintain the residential districts. I'll be the first person to tell you that if we all fanned out in the neighborhood right now, we could all come back with somebody's house that needed to make an improvement. We can go to any community in the area and find that. You can go to Bolingbrook, go to Naperville, go to Homewood. We could all fan out in the neighborhood and we could all find things that need to be done. But in general, I think our property presents pretty well. That is a direct result of Zoran and his team that are regularly out having conversations, trying to do it informally. But we do have a home court, and when people are issued citations, they're first given the chance to rectify it, and then if they don't, then they're brought into home court. Those are the days that Zoran, besides today, those are the days Zoran comes in with a coat and a tie on, because I know he's going to court. I know he wants to look good in front of the hearing officer because we're looking to bring those properties back into compliance. Anybody else? All right, I'm going to be sticking around. I know the other speakers will as well. Thank you so much for your attention. Thanks for the lunch. Susan, thanks for sponsoring the event. Hope you had a great time. Thank you all.